Okay, let's see. I think we're back. So you're gonna see me my eyes wandering around here a little bit as I get everything sorted out again. Okay, yeah, we're back. Okay. So, hopefully this works better. I can't promise anything, but sometimes doing that works better. Oh, we got hi from Powell River, BC, Canada. Okay. And I believe that we are all set up on YouTube. Okay, YouTube's running. All right. Hi everybody. Again, hopefully this is our third time starting this video this morning, because the first time it disconnected on me, and the second time we had a lot of people saying that it was jumping around a bit. So hopefully this will have fixed all of that and we won't have these issues anymore. So I'm gonna say hi, Mom.
Hi, everybody.
Let's see, Arizona, Missouri, Iowa, Michigan. Go ahead, what were you gonna say?
I'm just watching the screen.
Oh. Okay, so we come on early, number one, to try and get over any sort of hurdles that we might have in advance, like, for example, glitchiness, but also to answer any questions. So if any of you guys have questions, it can be about the Macaw class, or something else you're working on, or something else about Quiltworx in general. We'd love to answer those for you right now. And if not, I can
explain what our quilt universities are about.
Oh, let's talk about Quiltworx University. Okay, so we do something called Quiltworx University twice a year, and this year we have one in Texas, and that's at the end of March. I think there's only like 4 or 5 spots left in that one, and the sign up is through Stitch in Heaven. I can switch over to our website here and show you. Let's see, I think I gotta close this and show you where that is, the sign up information is at. See, let's open up a new page. So Quiltworx University is a really fun thing that we do to teach people not only about paper piecing in a large workshop environment, but also to, oops, I can't even type our website, but also to teach people about how to use mixers. So we go to 2 places a year. This year we have one in, if you go to our website, you can go to Quiltworx events, and underneath you see Stitch in Heaven and Shipshewana. So Stitch in Heaven is the first one, and that's going to be in March, at the end of March, and Shipshewana is in September. Shipshewana is in Indiana, for those of you who don't know where that is.
And it's an Amish country.
It's an Amish country. Yoder Department Store is a certified shop that we work with, and they help sponsor that event. And then the one in Texas we're doing with Stitch in Heaven, who is also a certified shop. And if you're looking for more information on it, you can click here. There's a sign up button which takes you to their website to sign up. But what we do is we help you in advance custom design a project. Now there's a few different ways you can do it. One, if you don't want to do anything with custom design, for Stitch in Heaven, we have pumpkin spice and Christmas cactus as quilt options to just choose from and work with. Someone asked, how many days is Shipshewana? Shipshewana is, so they're all 5 days. So they all run
Sunday.
Yep, you come on a Sunday. Then classes Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and most people leave Friday afternoon sometime depending on their travel plans. You can stay through Friday evening and leave on Saturday if you want, but workshop and class time ends at 4 p.m. on Friday. Someone said, do you know if there's video tutorials for the diamonds and succulent jade? The answer to that, Bonnie, is maybe. Go on our YouTube channel and look at the amethyst pattern, and some of the blocks in amethyst are used in succulent jade, and the assembly process for those quilts are the same, so you might find information that you're looking for there.
But I don't think there's any diamonds in succulent jade.
Yeah, there might not be. Succulent jade has diamonds in it, I think, Mom.
Okay.
But those aren't in amethyst. It's not all the same, but some of them are crossovers. So you might find part of what you need there, but we don't have a video specifically for succulent jade. So anyway, I wanted to scroll through the Quiltworx University stuff here real quick. So the second option is you can choose from quilts that I've pre-designed using the blocks that are available for the workshop, or you can use Quiltster. And you can choose any of the layouts that we have for the event, and then you can choose which blocks you want to put into it, and then you can choose which fabrics you want to make your quilt down of. So the shop, so these are the fabrics that Stitch in Heaven has chosen to promote. We don't have this information available quite yet for Shipshawana, but it is coming. It's going to be, should we tell them what mixer we're going to base it on, Mom?
No.
Okay, Mom says it's still a secret. We're close, but sometimes it's better to wait and not announce that information until we're 100% sure that we know what we're doing. So anyway, it's a really fun thing to attend. Like I said, they're 5 days. One of the things that I do, because I go, and I will help people while they're there customize custom design quilt kits. So if that's something that you are interested in, you can let me know early in the week what you want, and I'll go in and use Quiltster and fabrics from the shop, and then we'll prep your kits, and then we can send them out to you. We bring in multiple instructors depending on how many students are in each class. So at Quiltworx University in Texas, we actually have 80 people coming, and our teachers there will be Karen Bryant, Brenda Anderson, Sandy Coffey, who also teaches all the time at Stitch in Heaven, and she lives in that area, and then Michelle Everts. So we will have those 4 instructors plus Judy in Texas. And we haven't made all of those decisions finalized for Shipshawana yet, but you do have the dates, and it's always a similar format. You do need to work on the project that we select for that, because there's so many students. We need to have everybody working on the same thing, but within the options for a mixer, really quickly, if we go down here, there's 5 layouts, 3 different ways you can combine blocks for this layout, 4 for this layout, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 for the king size. So we have a layout in nearly every size and shape, and then we have all these blocks. So if you start doing the math on how many different combinations of quilts you can have, I've done it before for one called
Stella Maris.
The Stella Maris, and there was like 54,000 options. So there's so many things that you can choose from, and the customization part of it is a huge part of what we do for this class. When you buy your kits for it, we custom cut all of those kits and have them delivered right to the event, so you don't have to worry about any of the cutting. there is cutting fees involved with that, but the shops do a great job of making this affordable and easy for everyone to get. And if you want to cut your own, then you can choose one of the 2 patterns that we chose. So, like for Texas,
we don't recommend you cutting your own. Because every time somebody cuts their own, we spend more time helping them organize it for each individual workshop that we do than we do because when we cut them, we have them all organized with your labels, and it works really nice.
It helps the class go very smoothly.
And as much as people want to use their own fabrics, what they run into is they start changing things out in their head, which doesn't work with the way the templates are set up. And so anyway, it's just a lot easier if you're going to do a workshop at a quilt university is to stay within what we provide, because that way you're all prepared, all your labels are set up for all the workshops, and it's about understanding. It's a learning experience to understand how to read the patterns, how to set up your kitting, how to move forward to make more quilts. It's not about coming up with your dream quilt of your life, because you only have 5 days to go through, and we teach you a lot of information about the process of organization, setting it up, paper piecing, different types of techniques throughout that week.
And they're fun.
Yes, they are a lot of fun.
We have a good time. The students have a good time. There's some people who come and join us over and over again. If you want custom quilts put together, we do a lot of that. The quilt shops that bring in the fabrics do an amazing job supporting these events. Like, I just can't say enough good things about everybody that we work with. They're really in the business of entertaining and educating and getting you exactly what it is that you would like. So I'm going to double check real quick, since we have a couple minutes left here before we get started, since someone asked. So on amethyst, so one of the blocks on the amethyst work session that is in, what did you just ask me for? Succulent jade is this,
she wanted the diamond.
We don't have the diamonds, but we have the one with the
log cabin.
Yeah, it's this block right here.
Block.
It's not called log cabin. It's called woven star.
Okay.
So we do have the woven star video, and I'm pretty sure that block is in succulent jade. I'm just looking it up for sure, just so I have a picture. But yeah, it forms the center. So that block is available. Oh, but we do have a different, it has a different, so one of them has the ribbons on the outside. The one in succulent jade has spikes. So there's instructions for the ribbons, there's instructions for the spikes, and there's instructions for the log cabin piece. But you might have to put them together out of the amethyst pattern. And then we don't have one specific to the diamonds.
The only thing we have that's even specific to the strip piecing for the diamond would be in Stella Maris. Well, actually, what we did in this class right here.
The one we just did in Macaw.
Yeah, that's going to be the closest thing. Yeah. But we don't, I would say go find a instructor that's teaching one of the Star Babies blocks that shows all of the strip piecing for the diamonds.
Yes, so that would be a good place to go. Okay. It's 12:58, so we have a couple more minutes. Sue I don't know how to pronounce your last name, Sue, so I'm not going to. But she says she can't wait. She's signed up for Shipshewana. So, yay, we'll see you there.
Good. It's a great event. We really had a lot of fun last time at Shipshewana.
Yes.
As well.
Yep. So, yeah, you should, if you're interested in attending one of those, definitely look into the 2 we have this year. Next year, we don't have them officially advertised yet, but we will be in Tucson, Arizona again in February of 2023. And then we'll be on Madeline Island at the Madeline Island School of the Arts in September. So those are the 2 we have scheduled for 2023. And then I'm going to add something. If you guys want to do a class that's really based around what you want, it's not based around what we're actually teaching in a class, and you have a quilt you started and you just want me to help you, then come to Montana. That's where we do all of the personalized workshops where I just help everybody get through their projects. Yes. The only thing is, if we have one space left in 2022, you'll be lucky. I'm not sure what we have in 2022. We usually put out our new schedules in May or June of each year. Somebody said, are we going to be doing more tutorials like this in 2022? So kind of.
Yeah.
So, but
different stuff.
So we do. So I'm going to take a couple minutes because it is 1 p.m. But previous to COVID, we had done a group of workshops called work sessions. We are going to continue our work sessions on different patterns, and we do have one that we'll probably start promoting around March, and the videos will start probably sometime in May or June, depending on fabric availability for the kits that would be available. That project is going to be called Pocket Full of Posies, and it has a lot of applique on it. Do you want to show them that, Mom?
I don't care. Yeah.
Okay, so I'll show you guys Pocket Full of Posies really quick. And then the other thing I will say is that we do have a lot of videos on our YouTube channel, but it was really in response to COVID that we did this. And the reason why is because we had a lot of patterns that we're publishing right when COVID hit. Our instructors couldn't get into classes, and we had to have a way to promote our products and also get them out to students. The other thing that happened is we had a Quiltworx University that was canceled, that was
canceled.
Well, we did have 2, but one of them was based on a group of patterns called the Stella Maris series, which is what Macaw is out of. And we tried to, so we wanted to
help all those women.
That's right. We wanted to help everybody on their projects so that, because they got all of their kits and everything, and then COVID happened and we had to cancel the event
3 days before the event.
Well, like 3 weeks. It felt like 3 days. It was we were at the finish line and we had to cancel. So everybody has experienced things like that because of COVID. And so we decided that we would build this video studio that you see here, and that we would release all of the blocks in that series. So there's a few blocks a couple things. One, we've recorded them. I haven't had a chance to finish editing them. So this is one of my things I want to do over the next couple months. And so I'll be announcing, oh, by the way, here's this full quilt, and here's this full quilt, and here's this full quilt. And then we probably have a couple more blocks that are lingering out there that we might need to add to that group. We got to go back through the list and double check it. And then the other thing is we want to continue to do some general videos like this, but they the reality is we maybe only can put one out a year for free, and there's might be some fees associated with those for other workshops in the future beyond the Stella Maris group. That being said, in comparison to coming to our in-person classes, which, like I said, are great fun and we love them, the online workshops would be probably very affordably priced. But I don't know that we will do we just don't have time to put out the content for each of our patterns. But we will continue to do our work sessions, and I was going to show you the poppy one. So transfer. So this is Pocket Full of Posies. Let's open that up queen size, or bigger. So it's a queen size quilt, and it has a lot of applique in it.
That can be done on a, Vanessa's going to do the digitizing for it as well.
Yes, so you'll have all the pieces for it, but we are also working with Vanessa from Fabric Confetti, and she'll be doing digitized embroidery designs for this. So if you guys like digitized embroidery, you should be able to do this quilt. So let's see. So I have a couple people saying that the audio is a bit behind and there's some brief freezes. So everything does seem to be running pretty smoothly on my end right now. I haven't had any notifications that I'm disconnecting. So if you're experiencing that, you might try shutting it off and turning on the live video again. The other thing is I'm recording it, so we can always upload the recorded version after this if you're having trouble with some glitches, and then you won't have all of that, and you can always refer back to it when we get there. So I'm sorry if you're experiencing that. It's part of the live process, and I disconnected once and reconnected, and we seem to be doing a lot better now. So anyway, Pocket Full of Posies is the one pattern that we will be doing on YouTube next year for sure. If we have a chance, we may do another one later in the year, but we haven't picked that design yet. But like I said, in most cases, whatever we do there will probably be some fee associated with it. We haven't worked out all the details for that yet. And then of course we'll have finished up all of the projects. So if you want to find those on our YouTube channel, go to YouTube and then click on the playlists, and you can see Macaw Queen, you'll see Macaw somewhere in that list, but you also see Cosmic Shimmer, Trifari Jewels, Star of Fire, Silver Shores, Crimson Poppy. Those were all part of patterns that we put out videos for. Some of them have all of the pieces done. Some of them I have a couple videos still to finish. There's also a couple that we did as promotions during COVID with fabric companies, the Tea Time placemats, Impatience placemats. And then we have our work sessions for Amethyst and our work session for Valley Blossoms. So there's quite a few video options for you to continue on with your Quiltworx journey if you want to use our YouTube channel. We also have, if you go to our Quiltworx support network, we have people there who are doing, like you can ask about it, and certified instructors who are doing like Zoom classes, or a lot of them have Zoom classes. Some of them have pre-recorded classes that you purchase. So there's even more that you can find if you're really into the online classes. And I would really encourage you to check in on those because they do a really great job with their online classes. So the one last thing I want to say about it. We are working on an update to the website, and I've mentioned this a couple other times, but with that update to the website, we will have some drop-down menu or a feature that says online workshops, And it will have not only the Quiltworx workshops, but any workshops that certified instructors put into the system will show up there as well. So online, of course, is something that many of you like, and I would love to, and we really want to make sure that the opportunities that are there for those of you who need online are available and easy to find. And right now that's not the case, but by the end of the year, we should have a website that does a good job of making it easy to find all the opportunities. So, okay, I think we're ready to get started. So I'm going to switch the video over here. Let's switch over to this view. Okay, Mom.
Hi, everybody. I'm really glad you're here, and I'm really glad we have the opportunity to do this. I know it takes a lot of time out of everybody's life around the office to put these events on, but they are kind of fun to put on. So last week we were working on the star point border, and I put this on the wall, and we're gonna kind of work through it throughout the day, but I wanted you guys to see how these are set up. And then we'd also talked a little bit about how to assemble these, and I want to mention that when I left, I went back and started doing just a little bit more sewing, and when I started sewing the two pieces together, I noticed that I had a lot of stretch when we were sewing our groups together. So I'm going to point out a couple tricks here. These two lines, are we on both of them? Okay. Yeah. The line where we adjoin these, that's all bias on both pieces. And so I just started sewing, and when I got to the end, I noticed that I had about 1/8 of an inch stretch on the top piece. So I went back and I decided, well, let's just go ahead and glue. So I want to really show you guys because it works really good. So I just took my glue stick and I ran it right along the edge of the fabric, just like that. And then I just took all of my pieces and I matched them at the bottom and the top. And I think I showed this to you, but then when I ran them through, nothing stretched, and every single one of my pieces are coming out really straight along the bottom. So I think this is really a good trick. When those fabrics are glued along the raw edges, the pressure foot doesn't have a tendency to pull the two pieces away from each other. So anyway, I want you guys to think about that when you're actually sewing these. The other thing I want to notice, I'm just going to go ahead and pull this apart, is when I assembled these, I actually did them as groups. So I did put them together in twosies and then foursies. But one of the things I had to do is I had to leave all of the numbers on them because I had to make sure I was getting them all joined in the right order. But you will notice that as you're joining these, that you're going to have the 4 color groups. You're going to end up with these 4 color groups as you go. So if you notice that one of your color groups aren't falling in the right place, that's a good sign that you just sewed something backwards, or you got some blocks mixed up. So kind of pay attention to that. But it worked really good to do twosies. I'd do 2 of those, and then set them up. I kept all of the numbers on those because every one of these is specific as to where it goes. So this piece goes here. Put that, and this one goes back up here. All right, so the reason why you have to pay attention to where all of the number system and that you have them all in order is because there's TRP lines on some of those units, and you want to sew those TRP lines because when we go to sew this whole thing together, one of the TRP lines matches up right here at the seam allowance. So those 2 are T-lines that I have my finger on up here. Those match up. And then there's another one that matches up to the main seam that goes like this. And this one will match up to where another block comes in. And so the purpose of that is it keeps everything equally. As you pin them together, you know exactly where you're going to have to pin. You don't have to spread the whole thing out on your table and pin from the ends and back to the center. You just find those places where they're supposed to match up and put a pin there, and then you just work you sew between the pins, the TRP lines, and when you're all done, you will be surprised how square your quilts are when you're done. You don't end up with a quilt that is really wavy and everything, because those TRP lines work great for that. All right, so don't forget to sew those. It's really important that those are there, because all along this edges you're going to be dealing with bias, and if you just try to pin up here and start sewing, you could end up with a 1/2 inch at the end that you have to pick it apart and try to work it back in. All right, so that's all I'm going to say about that. Those are really fun to make. Now we're gonna start with the border. So last week we went through cutting out the papers. I told you guys to cut out your papers, and I suggested that you go through and get all your strips cut out. All right, so basically what I'm going to do is go through and the instructions, and we're going to read through the instructions as we go, and I'm going to show you some things, and then I'm going to come back and we're going to do some paper piecing. So let's start. I'm going to be on my book, it's page 2, because I'm in that mixer booklet. But the very first one, we cut out all of the pieces for the background, and it's for these spikes that set in here, which I have not made any of those, because I wanted to go through that cutting with you and how to set that up. So everything from the cutting instructions for unit D1R and D1L are in this bag, and that makes those pieces, and I don't even have a name for that unit. So anyway, what is that unit?
What page were you on again, Mom?
Huh?
What page are you on again?
I'm on page 2, but I have the mixer booklet.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know what
page.
page.
With the table.
It's actually unit.
Yeah.
I gotta find the papers. Here we go. It's the unit that has the spikes in it, and it's called unit D1R and D1L. So there's a left and a right side to it. All right, and that's what all of that cutting is for. And we're going to work through all of the cutting on this bag in just a second. After we get that bag done with the cutting, I'm just going to go through, because some of this I'm not going to show you. Then we have these big pieces here. And these are cut out of the black fabric, as you can see. I want you guys to notice that I've cut, I got them together here. You have a left and right side piece of those as well, okay? And you're going to notice that I've actually cut on all of the TRP lines, and I went through and sewed those on this particular piece. Some of these I'm going to show you can actually get away with just marking them, but sometimes this fabric is so hard to see anything, it's just easier for me to sew it than try to figure out where a mark is on the back of it. And these TRP lines, when you assemble them, they match up. So my TRP lines match up right like this. So it keeps those block elements right where they're supposed to be. The other thing about this piece is there's a TRP line right at the end of the paper. And it's like, well, what's that for? And you look at it, and I quite often forget it. And then when I start to assemble, I remember what that was for. This TRP line is important because it actually matches up with where the intersection of these 3 pieces come together. And if you can get those matched where they are supposed to sew up, it pretty much sets this part, the whole quilt, it just lays it right where it needs to be. So don't forget that particular TRP line, all right? The rest of these are actually what I call TRP lines that are in between block elements. But this one on the corner is for the main assembly of the quilt, right? And so we cut out all of those, and those are your template D2, and they fit right down at the bottom. And then you have a stack there, and I'm going to quickly show you how I cut this out. So I will actually have all of my fabric stacked like this. Then I get the T-template set up, and I'm just going to cut right along the edge like that. And then I take the whole thing and I just flip it over and place it on the other half of the stack. So if I have to cut through 8 of these, then I'll have 8 fabrics stacked underneath there. If you have to do 16, which you do on some of the pieces, you're going to have to divide that into a couple stacks to get an accurate cutting on it. So I've already cut several of these, so I don't need to cut this apart for you guys. So I'm going to lay these up here. The next piece you're going to have that you have to do your cutting on are these pieces. Now, in my instructions, one of the things I do when I'm working with a quilt like this, where I have to use the same templates for the inside colors and the same templates used for the outside colors, and they're 2 different colors, then I go through my instructions, because if I don't mark it in my book when I'm working with the instruction, I'm going to cut them out of the wrong fabrics. I'm just going to pick them up and cut everything out of the wrong strips. So what I like to do is go through and I'll put a fabric swatch and I'll read through it and make sure I'm getting everything matched up to the way the color is setting on the cover sheet, or the way I have my yardage, whatever colors I've picked, and I'll actually put a swatch there. Because these pieces are actually cut again over on this page out of a different color. And if I'm not paying attention, I can pick up the wrong fabric and do that. So it really helps to put swatches right in your book of which one. And then the other thing I like to do is, so that I don't have to go back and read it 10 times, I'll actually write the number of pieces either right onto my template or onto the cutting information in the pattern. So it just makes it easy, because once you know how to cut it out, it's easy to just look at it and go, oh, I have to have 8 pieces, and then you can do the math in your head as you're cutting. So when I'm working with something like this, I'm actually going to go through here and I'm going to cut right along that, and then we're going to line that up, and then we're just going to take and we're going to cut along that line. We're going to get rid of that chunk, and then we're going to, so I like to go through and get all of these triangles cut, and then come back and actually do the final cutting around that piece. And out of a full strip, you should be able to get 6 pieces. And you have to have 1, 2, 3, 4, so you have to have 16 throughout the whole quilt. So your bottom strip, you're going to either cut some extras, or you'll have to pull your fabric off the bottom. And when you're cutting those spaces, make sure that you leave just a little bit of room on all sides of it. Don't cut it right along the paper, because as you keep picking it up and moving it, you may not have them aligned perfectly, and that will allow you to come back and clean those up. So then I would actually take this after I have all those pieces. This is when I'll put it on my paper and make sure I have fabric. And I'm going to move this one back just a little bit, like that. And now I'm going to take that and I can cut through that. And once I get that cut, before I do anything else, I'll put a couple paper clips along that edge, and that keeps that from moving. And then I can come back and cut this line. Right? Now, you guys are going to have to be the judge as to how many layers of fabric you're going to cut through. I'm actually cutting through 12 layers right here. And so in order to do that, I'm going to grab my curved ruler and lay that down. I'm going to move this paper clip down here to get that other side. And then I'm going to take this and I'm just going to run the ruler and keep moving it as I go. I'm also using a big rotary cutter. If you have a little rotary cutter, that won't work. All right? And it's a brand new blade. Oops. Missed just a little bit there. I personally feel like if you're working with batiks, it's very easy to cut through 12 layers of fabric. When you're working through the heavier cottons, you're probably better off accuracy-wise to stick with 8 layers if you have a big rotary cutter, because they will move for you. So now we have all of those cut. Right, we have those cut. So we're going to move to the next set of instructions here. So the next set of instructions are my geese. And I have them, you have 2 different size or units for the geese. They go from, I believe it's unit 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. 3 and 6 are exactly the same size, and the TRP lines are the same. And the 2, the 4, the 5, and the 7 are exactly the same. So before I start, I just want to show you the difference in those. So see how you have the geese going this way in one of your blocks, and the geese are going the opposite direction in the other block. That's because the number 6 actually is supposed to fit upside down. Okay, so now I have all geese going in the right direction. So what I do is I come in here and I'll set up my little swatches so that I know I'm getting my colors in the right place. And then I'll take the unit 3 and the unit 6s, and I put them in a bag, and they're going to go into this bag, and my units, the rest of the units are going to go into this bag. So you guys want to do this before you actually start that paper piecing, because then it's easy to get all of the stacking going in the right, to make sure you get your stacking. Don't try to paper piece both these units at the same time, or you're going to end up with your colors going backwards in one of them. We've tried it before and we always mess it up, so I just advise you do one bag at a time and then move forward with it. So I'm going to come back and show you how to get started on the geese with the paper piecing here in just a minute. Okay, so all of those cutting instructions are there for all the different colors and how you set up the geese, and you just cut the triangles. And then you probably will have to do some sorting to get all your red fabrics together, all your purple fabrics. And so when you're all done, you're going to have to sort your colors in order to stack. Then we're going to go back, or we're going to move forward. And so after you get all the geese cut out, then you're going to have to go in and reuse these templates and you have a D3 template, and you have to cut your melons out of your black fabric, and then you have to cut your D4 templates out of your black fabric, and you have to have 16 of these, so you're going to have to divide that into 2 or 3 cutting. But the nice thing about it is if you will cut them big, then you can clip those templates on, cut around that, pull the template off, because remember we have the repositionable glue, and then we can put it onto the next group of pieces and cut. Okay, so we're not going to cut any more of those. I think you guys know how to do that now. And then the very last one, fabric, this is your fabric D11, and it is actually these big pieces up here, okay? In order to get...
Show them the pieces again. I clicked on the wrong view.
Okay, up here.
Yeah, the ones
So
at the top.
these are your outside border pieces, and I'll just take one of these down for you. You might see it better on the table. So you have these long pieces, and then there's actually 3 different templates there that you have to work with. We actually, when we laid this out to go across the grain, it actually doubled the yardage on these because we could only get 1 piece from a strip. And so we chose to actually run these down the salvage grain. Not only that, having it on the salvage grain takes all of the stretch out along the outside border. And so when you cut those, you're supposed to have two 30-inch strips, and then you're going to lay these pieces on just like it looks, just like it's done in the pattern, and cut these. So these are actually going to be going along the salvage edge. If you're using a striped fabric, you're not going to want to do that. And so what you're going to want to come back and figure out and just cut these, and you're going to have the strips, but you're going to have quite a bit of waste of fabric if you're working with a striped fabric. And I've seen a lot of people do stripes around the outside of their quilt, but if you do that, just realize that you're going to have to increase your yardage by quite a bit there. The other thing is, if you are working with a striped fabric, you're going to want to take a little bit of time to figure out where these pieces would join, because you're going to have to make sure that your stripes come through where that angle comes in. So that's going to take a little bit of fussy cutting. And when I do something like that, I'll actually normally cut that, leave that seam allowance just a little bit bigger, so that if I have to maneuver it just a little bit when I go to sew it up to get those stripes to match, it allows me a little bit of excess room there to play with. And if I don't need it, that's great, but sometimes it's harder to do the fussy cutting that way. Now, another thing you can do if you are going to do something that requires fussy cutting and you don't want that seam in there, you can actually take your papers. I'm going to pull this down, and this works really good for people. I can actually take my papers and I can glue my papers together and match up the actual sew lines on there, and then lay that down the salvage or however I want on my quilt. And if I want my stripes to go a certain way and it doesn't work going down the salvage, then I can cut my strips out of and sew the stripes together, and then lay this across the whole piece. So that's just for fussy cutting, but we do it a lot when we're working with these piece borders like that. So that's the way most of them will work, that pull those together. So just go ahead and join the paper and join your strips before you actually do your cutting. And it's a little bit easier to make that work, all right? Okay, so we're through the cutting. That was fast. And I'm going to put these back up. And this piece goes right here. All right. So now we're going to go through the paper piecing part of it. And I'm going to work with, I think I put the pieces in the wrong bag. Nope, that's right. I just have the bags labeled wrong. Oops.
Hi, Pam from Georgia.
I should
And
leave
hi,
this
Deborah.
open.
We got a couple of people joining us.
Okay, so we're going to do the sub-cutting for these spikes. So I have my template layout sheets, and I have 2 sets of foundation papers right here. And so this one is my D1R. I'm just going to keep my bags because we're going to actually separate all of this fabric as we cut. And there's my D1L. So I have my D1R units here. Actually, I'm going to change that. And I'm going to put it here and here. And I'm going to show you what my little bag was that I just threw away here. When I'm cutting out my quilts, I'll actually save a small chunk of fabric, put it in a small bag, and whenever I need little swatches, they're always there. I don't have to keep digging through my garbage for them. All right, so we have a D8. I should have all of this in order for you. So we have fabric D5. It's fabric D5. Okay, and this is my fabric D1. So we're going to take my D1 fabric and we're going to open this up. And I'm going to have to move some stuff out of the way. So the first thing you want to do is look at your picture. And this one's basically, when I look at that picture on how to cut, I can actually cut these pieces right in half. So we don't have to deal with both of them. If I can find where I threw my rotary cutter. And now this piece is going to go with this group. And this piece over here is going to go with this group, okay? And I'm just going to fold that one up and we'll just cut one of them. So I'm going to take my repositionable glue. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at this and I'm just going to kind of put the glue in the areas that I know are going to get cut out. And that way I don't have to deal with it when it's going through my sewing machine. And I can take this and I'll put it right like this. Then I'm going to take a ruler. And remember, give yourself just a little bit of room there along that edge. And then we're going to pick this piece up. We're going to place it on there like that. And then we're going to cut our very first edge. And then I'm going to take this one. Now before I go any further, I'm going to grab my paper clips. I'm going to put a paper clip on each one of those sections. Okay. Now I don't have to worry about my paper moving on there. And then we're going to finish cleaning up around the outside edge of it. And now we're going to find cut line 1. And I'm going to use my add a quarter ruler. I like using the add a quarter when I do my cut lines because then it balances on my paper clips and it's not tipped. And it's just a little bit safer to work with. Okay, now that I have these all cut, so that we don't get them all mixed up, I'm going to say my largest section is 7. We're going to put 5 on the top, 3 on the top of that, and 1 on the top of that. And then while I continue my cutting, I'm just going to clip those together and put them right there.
You have a question. Debbie asked, are paper clips better than using pins?
Yeah, because your paper clips, you can clip like up to 12, 18 layers of fabric together. You can't get a pin to go through that. It'll bust it, break it, and you'll end up poking yourself anyway. So the paper clips are great. You pull them off. They're easy to, the templates are easy. You're not constantly having to redo things. And if you have to put it away and you can only do a little bit of paper piecing, you can do like 2 of every unit or 1 of every unit, take the top piece on, and then put it back in, and you're going to save yourself hours putting the pin back and forth. But we work with so many layers with our stacks that trying to put a pin through 20 layers of fabric, it just doesn't work. And the other thing is when we get too much where we can't get a paper clip on it, or yeah, paper clip, then we'll do a binder clip. And so to clip a whole group of fabrics together. So the pins, they're a nuisance to work with. This works great. So use your pins when you're actually doing your sewing. But for stacking and cutting, the paper clips work better. Okay, so this particular piece, I have my 2 templates, and when I sorted everything out, I went through all of my template layout sheets and I matched them up before I started doing any cutting with the fabrics that we're actually cutting from them, okay? And this is a DR, this is for my right side, and this template's for the left side. So if I look at my instructions, it's going to tell me in my instructions how to position those. And we have to open up the fabrics, and I have there's quite a bit of leftover waste on this one, so I'm going to actually cut from both ends. That way I don't have to move everything to iron right there along that fold. So I'm going to take this piece, just put a little bit of glue on the back side of that. I'm moving it because I'm missing a little bit of fabric right there off of this chunk. Okay, so now I'm going to actually take this, and one of the things I can do to make sure that I'm getting this long enough is I can flip the other one upside down and then cut that piece. right? So that's for that side. And then I'm going to cut this one off of this end. Get my salvage off. And I gave myself about an extra inch on that one. So now I can take my ruler and we're just going to lay this and we're going to cut it just a little bit. And then I can flip that over. Now here's the reality here. I can go back and clean this off if I want, but I really don't need to. I'm just wasting time to go in and cut these exactly to the size of the template. So as long as the fabric fits underneath the template, I can leave it just like that. I don't have to go back and do another trim on it. Then I can just flip this around, put a paper clip on there, and this one goes in my D1R bag, which is over here, and this one goes in the D1L bag. Well, I actually cut out the D1R template, so this is actually goes over here, and that goes here. All right, so that's an L, and then we're going to do that with each one of these other ones. Now, as you guys get used to reading the instructions, you're going to figure out, well, geez, I don't really need to. I can just lay these two pieces on here like this, and then I can actually take that and cut it, and then I can take this, and that's right, so I'm going to cut this one. Then we're going to flip this up like that, put this one here, and on this one I really don't even have to put the glue on it. All I have to do is just cut along that edge, flip it over, and I have a piece big enough to go under it, and that's my D1L, so that goes here. Then we can take this one, I'm going to flip that one there. Oh, look what I did. I forgot to actually put that right side up on this side. I did the other one the right way. Don't do that, right?
Oops, way to go.
Because basically what I did there, by not making sure my fabrics are right side up, is I have two templates now that aren't going to work for me, okay? So I'll have to recut those. So always make sure your fabric is stacked right side up before you make that cut. And that's my D1R. So we'll just put that like that and put it over there anyway. Okay. And then we're going to go to the next one. And I can tell that if I cut these like this, I can cut a chunk out of here, and a chunk here. And now you're going to put your fabrics and stack them right side up so you don't make that mistake. If you guys think I don't make mistakes, you have no idea how many times I re-sew quilts because I don't follow my directions. So I'm going to take that, put that one like that, and then I need to move that down just a little bit more. And then we're going to take that.
One time we even had one that we sewed up and we quilted it.
That's my R.
And realized one of the blocks in the center was flipped upside down on the way to a show. On the way to our vendor show to show it off as a new product.
So we hid that.
Behind a box, I think.
And then we had keepsake quilting bag. And I said, yeah, well, we have to pick out a whole bunch of quilting and replace a block in there. It's not right. And she goes, oh, we'll just take a picture of it the way it is, and we'll make sure that we put a table in front of that corner of it.
Yeah, she said, we'll use a different corner to feature in the quilt.
Sure and then when the magazine came out, it had the wrong corner in it.
So mistakes happen.
They do.
But you know what? I decided that we needed to just keep that quilt with the mistake in it.
Mostly to remind them that their mother makes mistakes.
Yeah, that's right.
Actually, that particular quilt was supposed to be the perfect quilt.
Oh, that's another thing. If Judy ever writes the perfect pattern that doesn't have mistakes in it, she's retiring. So, so for those of you who think that we have a lot of mistakes in some of our patterns, we fully admit it, that sometimes we do, and we do our best to catch them, but sometimes the stars just don't align. But just remind yourself when you're downloading those that if she ever writes the perfect pattern that she's going to retire. So as long as she keeps making mistakes, we get to keep her around.
All right. My CIs make mistakes too.
We all do. We're human.
Every day. All right, so D1L goes over to this pile and D1R goes to this pile. So we're going to take all of this stuff for D1L and put it back in the bag.
Debbie says, I have 2 quilt kits that are waiting for me to be brave enough to start them.
Oh, just start.
Yep. Go out and watch a bunch of videos on our YouTube channel. We have, well, this will go there, plus there's several for a number of different patterns. Probably we don't have the quilt kits that you're waiting to work on, but at least we'll have things that will give you a lot of confidence on how to get started and how the techniques work, because 95% of it from one quilt to the next is
the same.
So each quilt has a few little things in it that are nice to know and fun. You know, they make it easier for you to catch. You might learn something new, but we try and make sure to keep everything very consistent. In fact, I saw someone comment yesterday on the Quiltworx support network that every time she opens up a set of our instructions, she gets intimidated and closes them and puts them back on the shelf. And I thought, if you start to read through them and realize that everything we write from step to step to step is very similar, you really only read through 1 or 2 sets of instructions and then you start to understand it. You end up following the graphics. So if I switch over like to this, you follow the cutting graphics for sure. Those pictures are really helpful to know how to lay your templates on and where to cut. They're all to scale. And then you get to the paper piecing steps. And again, it's the same steps. And you'll notice as you read through each group that we walk you through the same instructions. We've tried to standardize everything we do as much as possible so that you know what to expect. The first ones you do might take you a little bit more time, but when you catch on to the technique, the paper makes everything come together so perfectly and easy.
Oh, yeah. I'm ready. So we're going to get this stacked. So if we look, we go all the way up to 8 sections. So what we want to do is find the fabric for section 8, which is my longest point, and I'm going to find the sew side. So my sew side's along that edge, and then we're going to flip this one over, and this one is actually section 7. I'm going to move the paper clip to the sew side. I normally put the paper clip on the sew side as I'm working through it, because sometimes I remove the template and then I forget which side is my sew side. So anyway, it just works easy. So that's section 7, and now we're going to find section 6. That's my sew side. Now we're going to find section 5. And this is my sew side. And then we're going to find section 4. And then we're going to find section 3. And then we're going to find section 2. And section 1 really doesn't have a sew side, so you just set it on top. So one of the other nice things about having the paper clip on the sew side is if I only want to pull one piece off, then I can just flip it up and I can actually pull it out just off the bottom like that. Okay, so I'm actually going to show you guys, because a lot of people want to go through, and especially when you're working in a class, you don't have the time to sit there and do 4 of these or 8 of them. So like during a class time, you'll actually work on one block. So I'm going to show you how I set it up to where you can work on one block. So I'm just, after I get it all stacked the way it's supposed to be stacked, I flip it back over, and that's when I would actually take and pull that piece out. And then I set that like that, and I start another pile just like this. And then I'll pick up the next one, and that's my sew side. So then I can set this one over here. And then we pull out one off of this one. We'll set that and this. And this is really a good way, if you're brand new to paper piecing, is to pull them off and work with one piece as you're going before you start your stacking. That way, if you have to redo something or recut something, you're only doing that for one unit, and you have all of these templates sitting there that you can replace that piece if you have to. And that one goes here and here, and then this one I'm going to show you. And then after you get that, then go ahead and just put a paper clip along the edge that's the sew side. Okay, now this is section 1, and if you have a light table, basically, if you look at the dashed lines that are around this element there, we have excess here and excess here, so we don't really have anything to figure out where to line it up. But if I took this template piece off of this, and I lined it up and I put it up to my light table or up to a light, I can actually match that where those seams actually match up on that paper. And now I know exactly where that's going to set underneath my template. So I can take my first piece, and even if I'm only making one unit, I'll normally put the first piece on all the way through it. So now I'm going to take my glue, and this is my fabric glue, not my repositionable. Actually, I think I will use the repositionable on this fabric. And I'm just going to run just a little bit of fabric or glue along there, not a lot. Don't butter it. And then I'm going to lay that down, and I'm going to match the paper up with the piece underneath, because I had these all stacked when I cut, so all my papers are the same size, all my fabrics are the same size. so I can stack the next piece right on top of that. Put a little bit of glue on the back. Get that in position. Do the next one. Okay, and then I'm going to reach underneath and pull the bottom piece of paper that I had sticking to my template. I'm going to pull that off and get that one started. All right, so now I have that very first piece already positioned, and at that point I can actually take and put paper clips on this to keep those from moving. And then I'm going to put my pile over here like this, and then we're going to take a binder clip, if I have one. I don't know if this will work because this is a little tiny binder clip, but yep, it worked. And then I just clip that whole stack together, and we'll set that aside. All right, so I'm going to put that template back with it. And we're done with our glue because we don't need any more glue as we go. And I'm going to grab my fold template. Now, this is not your typical plastic fold template. This is actually made out of copper, and it's very thin, and it has our logo on it. And we're in the process of getting these designed, and we're going to actually manufacture these. And they're expensive. Because it's out of copper, and copper is expensive. We can also make them out of brass, but it's basically the same size. But a template like this is going to run you somewhere about the same price as your add-a-quarter ruler. But you will never cut through it. That's the good part. You're not constantly wearing it out. It will last a lifetime. And so watch for these when we get these set up. I have a CI, her name's, she's probably watching me. She's from Chicago. Judel, help me. Celeste, they use this. They actually buy a bunch of this and they use these. And I saw those and I thought, those are awesome. And she has them, brings them in from a place, just the template. It doesn't have a label or anything on it. And they started using these several years ago, and they're awesome. The other thing that's cool is they're heavy, and so it lays down on your paper, and you can fold that paper right along that edge, and they're the perfect height for your add-a-quarter ruler. And you don't have issues with it sliding back and forth there. Okay, and then you're just going to pick it, and you won't throw that in the garbage because you'll know if you threw it in the garbage. All right, so now the next piece is my purple. If you don't know where to put that, then you're going to take this and you're going to grab your fold template and you're going to crease the dashed line around. And you're going to take that, and I'm just going to quickly mark. So there's my section right there, now that I have that. Normally when you're stacking, you only have to find that spot on the first piece. And then we're going to take this, and that sets right underneath there like that. And then I'm going to quickly put a little bit of glue right along the selvages, the raw edge there, not the selvage. And we're going to pick that up, And now I'm going to put that at my machine. We're going to set our machine at basically 1.7 on this. Actually, I think I'll go to 1.9 because it's a thicker fabric. And we're going to sew on line 1. And then we're going to sew up. And remember, you're going to sew up past that dashed line. So I sewed up there about 3 or 4 stitches. And now you're going to take it to the iron and you're going to press. I'm going to do a finger press just because it takes less time. Then we're going to flip it over. The problem with finger pressing is when you do a lot of finger pressing, you'll find that your fabric is really loose on the back, and when you pull the paper off, it's going to get, your piece is going to get a little bit bigger. Press. Use your iron to press, unless you're doing a demonstration. And then we're going to tear that back. So see how much I'm going to be trimming here? So I have my 1/4 trim. Move this off to the side. Then we're going to find the next section, and so I'm going to fold on the dash line along the line 3 and also along line 4. So what I did is I folded the area that I need to cover on the back, and then I'm just going to scribble it in here so you guys can see. Here's my section right here. So I pick this up. So this is what the type of piece a lot of people make a mistake on, because they'll come up here and they'll line it up here at the top. It actually has to be lined up along here, and if you had the template on there, it'll show you where the bottom is. This is my widest part. I have to have that fabric, and it has to come underneath this paper right here. So I'm going to just draw a line basically at the bottom of the paper, and then we're going to set it down here. So when I look at this, I have about 1/2 inch. I'm going to move it down just a little bit more because I folded back. Now I can see that it's actually going to cover that area there. And the other thing you want to double check, if you're just insecure, is fold this back all the way and make sure you have fabric. And I have fabric left over where the edge is. So you have to kind of look at some of your pieces to see where they're going to, where they position on here. Don't just pick it up and put it on one end and the other end. So we're going to open this up. Actually, I'm going to glue. And then we're going to press. Okay, now if you look at this, here's the bottom of my paper, and I have a hole right here. Well, the reason why I have the hole is because the next piece is going to be sewn over that, and it's something you'll find a lot on our papers. As you're adding things, you're wondering, well, why do I have these little holes? Well, sometimes those holes are when you sew the next piece on, that goes away, and that happens because we float all of our points. We float our points at the bottom and we float them at the top. So now when I place this on line 3 and I fold this back, then it's going to trim off that excess there, and now I don't have a hole, because now that piece filled in that, this piece will fill in that hole there. So this piece is going to go on here like this. My sew side is right along this edge, so I'm going to fold this back, and I'm going to look to see where that falls on the back side of my paper. And here's the edge of it, and then it comes like that. So that's where I folded. Now, I'm going to show you another trick here. Another way you can go through this is when you're looking at this from the top, come up here and find the top of your point out where the dashed line comes up and just poke a hole in there. And now you just put your finger on that hole and you make sure that you have fabric underneath that point and fabric underneath where it comes in at the bottom. So this would be more what I would call an advanced paper piece unit because of the funny angles in it. So it's gonna be a little harder for a beginner to see exactly where to put it. So the best way to do is just to go through and make sure that you mark those. And in our instructions, you'll always find where it says before you start paper piecing to trace the dashed lines on the back side of the paper. You don't have to do that on every single paper. All you have to do is one time if it's a new piece, and then as you start doing your folding, you don't have to go back and mark and fold all of that because you've already traced those lines by putting it on a light table. Okay. Now we're going to glue this. And I'm going to sew this one, and then we're going to quit because I think you guys get the idea of what you got to do here. We're going to sew on the line. All right, and then we have our next piece. And then we're going to continue with adding each one of these spikes, and they swing around as they go. Something else I do want to bring up is, if you guys are making something and you're having a hard time figuring out why it's not working, or maybe you don't know how to position something, we have that support network out there. A really easy way to get help is to take a picture of it with your phone and just load it on there, or text it to a friend that knows how to paper piece, and normally they can look right at it and tell you whether or not you have it positioned properly. So those little pictures, when people send us questions and they need my help, normally I have them go back, take snapshots of all their papers, and from the front and the back, and then I can normally just look at it and tell them exactly what step they missed, or we can correct everything and move them forward with all the pieces that they need. Okay, so we're going to set this aside, and actually these pieces are actually the ones that fit right in like this, so there'll be the other half over there, and that feels in that corner. Okay, and since I'm not going to finish it, I'm going to paint my paper clips. And we're going to put them inside like this. And we're going to take all those pieces and put them back into a bag. So when I come back to finish it, everything's together. Okay, so, whoops. I just threw all my pieces on the floor. Hey, what I'll do is I'll throw this on the floor with them. And we'll grab this other bag. So I'm gonna sew one piece on here for you guys so you can see how these geese work. We make geese in a lot of quilts, the curved geese, and they're very attractive in your patterns. But I will tell you that they're not always they're not fast to make, so they take a little bit of time. I'm going to just go ahead and cut off the first section here so that And my first color on this one is my red. So I'm going to sneak in here and grab some red fabric. I'm not going to set this up because there's no reason to go through and then throw it back in there. All I'm going to do is just get enough pieces here that I can show you how this is actually done. So we have that one. And this is my section 2. And that's my section 3. And this is where my goose falls. So it basically kind of looks like that. Those are the pieces that you're going to be working with. And this is my sew side. And I just have to make sure, yep, I have it right. So I have my sew sides to the right angle. So we're going to take the very first piece here and we're going to put a little bit of glue right on the back. And these are pretty easy to place because all you have to do is make sure that you have fabric sticking out on both sides of that curved piece there to get that first piece started. And then we're going to pick up our fold template and we're going to place this on line 1 and then we're going to trim. Okay, now we're going to grab the next piece. Now, right at this moment, it's really kind of hard to see where where this piece goes. And so as I go, I'm going to have to fold back every one of these to find the center. So I'm going to show you a trick. So in your instructions, it tells you to trace the back, the dash lines on the back. But when you're working with the geese like this, if you'll actually just go through and trace the straight line, it gives you the center all the way through. So I'm going to actually come in here and fold back on the dash line.
Debbie says she needs a fold template.
Well, you'll be able to get them pretty soon. So.
And in the meantime, we use plastic. She's always used plastic, but these ones are just so much more sturdy. So.
We're still in the design process, but we're close.
And on the plastic ones, you cut them and then they get destroyed, and so every so often you have to go make yourself new ones. So.
And we throw them away, and we lose them, and we sew them into our quilts sometime. So what I'm doing here is I'm showing you what I did is I traced just the first 3 dash lines. I normally, when I'm working with this type of a unit, I'll go through and trace these dash lines on all my foundation papers, okay? Because it saves me a ton of time trying to figure out whether I have these pieces positioned properly along the edges. So now I'm going to bring this back, and when I fold this back, look at it, shows me where my section is without having to do any work at all. And that is my section 2. So I'm going to grab the piece for section 2. That's my sew side, and I just set it right on there. So it takes about 5 minutes on a light table to actually go through and trace all those lines, and it'll probably save you a couple hours of going back and folding it and making sure that you have it positioned, because now every time you fold, you're going to see that section exactly where it has to fit. So I'm going to put a little bit of glue underneath there.
Debbie asked, will they be available in Australia, or will you ship to Australia?
Well, right now we can't ship to Australia.
We can ship to the distributor.
Yeah.
So shops need to order things through
We'll
the
have
distributor.
We'll have to work that out with our distributor, with Tony. to find out. So,
but as far as normally, we can ship to Australia. So if someone ordered, you just have to pay the shipping costs into Australia, which aren't always very cheap. But at the moment, because of COVID, we still haven't, when you click on the USPS to ship, it doesn't allow us to choose Australia. So hopefully that will be back soon, and we can.
It might be the type of thing where we'll talk to Tony, and then we'll figure out a way for the certified instructors in Australia and the other countries to get a hold of them and make it available. And then you guys can get them through them. Because it seems ridiculous when you have to pay $50 to get a package for something that you didn't pay that much for.
Right.
So.
Whereas if they bring in a whole package of them, then they can send them out to the shops, and then the shops, you can buy them at shops. And we have lots of certified shops in Australia.
And lots of certified instructors.
And instructors as well. And they are still getting products, and we are shipping to the distributors, but so we don't have those cutting template or the full templates ready quite yet to ship them, but once we do, hopefully that will be easy.
We're still probably on a couple months before we're going to be able to get them all cut and get them ready packaged, because we have to find packaging and shipping stuff, and we have a little bit to go, but we're going to get there. All right, so now if you come to Montana or Quilt University, we'll take them.
There you go.
All right, so now we're going to just put this piece on, and here again, see, I can see exactly where that section is because I went in there and drew those lines. So when you're working with a unit like this that has geese on it, if you'll go through and trace all of the straight lines, you don't have to trace the V lines, just the straight lines. So like on this piece, that would actually be line 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, and 12. And it'll save you a lot of time, and every time you fold it back, then you'll be able to see exactly where the fabric fits underneath there, right? So now I'm just going to take this and I'm going to sew that one. And then we're going to finger press that. And so then the next piece that would actually go on would be another geese. And on the geese, they're easy to see where they set. So I'm going to fold this back. And to put that goose on there, I believe it's my orange piece. So let's grab an orange one in here off of one of these piles. Don't mix up your piles like I'm doing, because you have to go back through and reset them all up. So, all right, so then all I have to do is just take and hold on to my paper right here and place that right along there, and that centers. And now I have a little dog ear on both sides of my paper from my goose fabric, the orange, and it's ready to sew. Now, you'll probably be able to just pick these up, this one, and actually just sew without gluing it. And it's a good practice to do it. When you're doing those side pieces, it's going to be faster to just glue them. And it's because the way the paper folds back underneath there, it's just hard to hold on to that without it moving. But this is actually easy to do. All right, so I've gone through the geese with you, and now we're going to go through some curved piecing techniques.
It's 2:23, just in case you're curious.
Okay, so I have 30 minutes. That will work good. All right, so I actually have 2 sets here, and I don't need my book for this, so we're going to move that out of the way. So I have one unit that's going to have my solid black, my geese, and my print fabric on the inside. And then I'm going to have the other one that will have the print fabric on the outside, the geese unit, and the solid black. All right, so those are your 2 groups that you have to put together. You're going to make, so 2 times 4, you're going to make 8 of this grouping, and you're going to have 16 of this grouping right here. All right. And at this point, I will tell you, if you mix up any of these pieces, I still have my paper on it, but if you get these mixed up, they're all going to fit it perfectly. So they're all exactly the same size, and all of the TRP lines are in the same place. All right. So we're going to start, and I'm going to make this one first. And now I'm going to start giving you a few little shortcuts here. So this piece has a TRP line in the center, but the reality is you really don't need that TRP. You don't have to sew that because you can fold this piece right in the center. Sew the TRP on the geese unit, okay? Because now I can take this and I can crease this right along the center, and then all I have to do is take the TRP from the geese and set it right on there onto that center fold. And then I'm going to actually take a pin and kind of weave it there, just like that, right? Now, actually, I don't want to weave that one. I'm going to make this one quite short, like that, so it sticks out over the edge. Then we're going to find 2 more pins.
We had a comment, you definitely need lots of plastic bags. That is true.
Yes.
We use lots of plastic bags and lots of paper clips.
Yes. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this edge right here, and I'm going to actually match it up to the raw edges together, and I'm going to take this one and I'm going to take my pin and weave that pin down along that edge like that, and then I'm going to take a second pin and weave that one, or just set that in there so I have 2 pins along that edge. All right, then we need 2 more flower pins, and we're going to do the same thing over here. And I'm going to take my pin, my first one, and this one I'm going to weave all the way up along that edge. And the reason for weaving is so that it doesn't pull away right here at the top. That should be straight all the way along there. And then we're going to take the next pin and just pin it one time like that. So now you have this funny looking piece like that. All right. All right, pay attention to my hands. So we're going to take this, and I'm actually going to take halfway between my first goose number. It would actually be number 8 goose or whatever, and I'm going to fold that, and I'm going to put a fold there, just like an accordion. And then I'm going to take the next goose, the set of geese, and I'm going to fold that one on top. And basically what I'm doing is trying to fold everything towards that center point there. Then we're going to take the next one and fold that one. Then we're going to take that one and fold that one. See how I'm getting that little accordion building there? Then we're going to take this one, and we're going to fold that one. We're going to fold that one, fold that, and fold that. What that does is it fans out the raw edges along here. And so it makes it a lot easier to get that set up. And then you can just take something heavy like your fold template, and you're going to take your glue, and you're going to start at this point back here, and we're just going to run this glue back to the center line, and we're going to press all of the raw edges together along that curve. Then we're going to come over here, and we're going to start at the beginning and go to the center, and we're going to press that, and make sure you don't press any folds in there.
That tip's getting a lot of comments. They love it.
It's great. Best way to make a curve with your geese. And I don't know why, but if you have a unit, a curved unit with 8 geese, this works fabulous. You have a curved unit with 7 geese, and you can't get it to fold like that. But the 8 geese work fabulous. And you guys are working with the 8 geese. So now all I have to do is just take this and hold on to that, and I take it right up to my machine, and I start my curve seam. And I'm going to do 1/4 of an inch along the edges. And you're going to want to downsize your stitch length when you're doing curves, because the bigger your stitch length, the faster your machine jumps around that curve. And if you have smaller stitches, then it makes a lot smoother curve for you, so you don't end up with your stitches going like this, your curve, like kind of like a straight line in between each stitch. So I'm going to go down to about a 1.6, and I'm going to start sewing. And then we're going to pull out the needle or the pin, and we're just, once we get that pin out of the way, then we can just start sewing. Okay, after you get about a 1/2 inch to 1 inch in, you're going to pull the other pin out of that edge, because then that starts letting that fabric move, and it just unfolds itself. If you feel like you're going to get a little pucker, just pull on that a little bit like that, and it'll pull that pucker right out. See how I keep pulling back on that? What that does is it takes all the puckers out from in front of the needle. And you should be sewing with your needle down, and I didn't do that. I'm going to push it down, because then if you have to lift your pressure foot, it won't move for you. I'm not having to move the pressure foot here at all. It's just sewing together like it's supposed to. And then we're going to pull that pin out at the end. Without, you don't pull the bottom one, because that'll keep it straight. And then don't veer off. Make sure you sew straight off the end, so you have a 1/4 of an inch there. Now we're going to pull the last one, and we have a perfect curve. And our curve seam doesn't go like this, because I have that little tiny stitch, and it allows my machine, it slows the machine down, it keeps the stitches so it doesn't jump as much between each stitch. Okay, so I'm going to, now we're going to take this. Now here's something that we learned probably about 3 years ago, that when we have large curves, instead of finding the center and matching from the center to the edge and the center to the edge, on your larger curves, divide it into 3 sections, okay? And I have TRP lines sewn here and TRP lines sewn here. So all I have to do is just match that TRP line like that, and we're going to take and put a pin right there. And then we're going to take the next TRP line, we're going to match those two. Now we're going to take this piece and we're going to do the same thing. We're going to weave the edges right along that edge like that. I'm going to take the second pin and put it down towards the bottom. Come over here. And when you're doing this weaving and working along the edges like that, if you have those really thin pins with the little round heads on them, they work really nice. Where a flower pin, they seem to be a little bit more bulky. So if you have the really long dressmaker pins, they're a lot nicer. I don't use them too much because I break them so much, so I've just kind of decided to stay with the flower pins. But so now I have it pinned on both sides, and I have it pinned right in here. And now all I have to do is grab my glue stick, and we're going to start on this edge, and we're going to go back to the first pin, and you're going to match those raw edges, and you'll be surprised, it fits perfectly right in there. You will not have any puckers. And then you're going to come over to the other side and work back to your first pin. Okay, now we're going to do in between the two pins, which are where our TRP lines are. Okay. So this is probably your best demo in this whole series right here. So now all I have to do is just pick this up, and we're going to do the same thing. We're going to start sewing. My stitch length is still down. I'm getting just a little bit of a pucker right there, so I'm going to lift my pressure foot and pull that fabric back, and it pulled that out. And we have a perfect piece. All right, so this one's the same way, except that my colors are just the opposite. So you guys don't have to watch that. Watch me do this as, okay. So now we're gonna go over just a little bit about the construction of this quilt. So this piece, I'm not gonna press it right now. Follow your pressing instructions in your pattern unless you don't like the way it sets. Like, this one probably has me press some of my units out and the other units in, and that way it's going to give me opposing seams when I actually sew these sections together. All right, that makes the most sense. However, if you're working with really light and dark fabrics that are going to shadow, you're probably going to want to press, like I would press to the dark and press to the dark. And then when I join these, I would join them with stacked seams. That way when my quilter comes in and she does in the ditch around that curve, then she's not jumping on top the fabric and off the seam. So it quilts up a lot nicer when you do that. Stacked seams are harder to sew together than opposing seams, but you can do them. And we do have some little videos out there for the stacked seams. And Judel, you might look to see where those are. Do you remember what patterns we did those with?
Well, I don't think it was a specific pattern, was it?
Yeah, I can't remember. You'd have to watch them all. Because I don't remember, but I know that we've done videos on how to do stack seams. So as you're watching some of the assembly quilts in the assembly process, there might be information there on that. So, but let's go back to the wall here. So basically this piece goes up like this, right? And what your instructions tell you to do.
Okay, stop for just a second, Mom.
Okay.
On our YouTube channel, I'm going to switch over to the computer here real quick. And you scroll down, there's a video. It's not tied to a pattern. It's called Stacked Seams Video When the Seams Are Facing You. And that one has some stacked seams. And then there's another one where stacked, like 2 videos down, it says sewing stacked seams facing away from you. So those are the 2 stacked seam videos. So I can throw those in the playlist. We can just link them into the playlist so everybody can see them if you want. But okay, that's what they are.
All right. Okay, so you're going to have your section here, and then you have this middle section here. Okay, so your instructions in your book before you start to assemble this, it should be in your instructions pretty much on your last page of instructions except the back page, so the second to the last page. It tells you how to assemble it, every single step it tells you. Okay, it also tells you all of the pressing information. And just looking at this, it looks like I set up the pressing instructions for stacked seams, not opposing seams, all right, on this particular one. So it's actually set up to do stacked seams. And it's going to show you which pieces to sew together. Notice in the 3rd step of there that the border pieces are joined together and then added on to these units down here. So don't sew this piece onto this section. Actually follow the way it's assembled right there in your book, okay? Then after you get done with all of your borders, now if you're joining the 3 pieces to do the queen, that's when you're going to go back to, I think I have it right here, your newsprint. And this piece of newsprint that comes with your queen size pattern is called LP57. Basically, it takes you all the way through the assemble from the center out. Now, you guys can assemble the center pieces, and that would take you up to layout Assembly Graphics 6. So once you get your center, if you get all your center done and then you decide to go up to the queen, you can actually sew the center group together, and then this is added on. But notice on Assembly Graphics 6 that we didn't actually sew the whole center together. What we did is we left it into 4 quarters, all right? Because this outside border, actually, it's not just sewn on. It actually, if you sew the center up, then you're going to end up with Y seams. So if you did sew the center up like what I have on my quilts on the wall over there, the easiest way to add your queen border, your C border, and your queen border is to pick back those corner seams about 4 to 5 inches and then assemble those outside borders onto it, and then sew those out to the edge. That way you have no Y seams. Okay? So follow these instructions on how to assemble, because it gives you step by step as you do it. Right? All right, I expect all 500 of you ladies to have this quilt done before the year's over. Wouldn't that be nice?
Yeah.
They're fun to make. And I will tell you that after you make this one, you'll be addicted to the process. And most of the videos that we have for all of the Stella Maris quilt patterns that you'll find out there for Stella Maris, and then there's playlists for each one of them. They're all assembled very similar to the way this quilt is assembled, because they're all made off of the same mixer group, which means that we use the same layout, and all we did is change the design elements within the slots of the layout on how you assemble. Okay? So I'm going to turn it back over to Judel.
I don't know why.
I don't either. I think we're basically done.
We're basically done.
Yeah.
The only thing I can think of, Mom, that maybe you didn't show them was the S curve.
This doesn't have an S curve.
Yeah, it does.
It does not.
Yeah, right there. You can see it on the wall.
No, that's a different piece.
No, down at the bottom.
Oh, that one.
Yeah.
You're right.
So, but do you have one of those units done?
I don't have one of those units done. If you guys want to wait around, I'll finish up that unit, and then I'll show you an S curve.
She's only got 2 pieces to sew onto it.
Yeah, if you don't, then we'll go ahead and record that, and I'll show you. I forgot about that S curve, but this is an S curve, so, but I have to finish that one unit, all right?
Jane says she was amazed at how the quarters went together so perfectly. That's good. That's some of the benefits of using the paper and getting all of your pieces perfect to start and having it as a guide for all your matching points. So, and I would also say, I mean, Quiltworx has been doing this since 1995, I think, is when you started. Approximately, there was a few little things here and there and some classes she was teaching at the Quilt Gallery, but when the company started, it was in 95. And a lot of the techniques that we have built in today to make those steps easier, we actually learned ourselves over time from teaching people how to do it, from seeing where the hard parts of the quilts were and incorporating that into our new designs. So things like, if you look at the quilt on the back, the fact that the points don't come up to the edges on any of our blocks. You'll notice on the Geese there's a very slight gap between each of them. That keeps all of your points perfect. It draws people's eyes to the points and not to any sort of fact that, oh, it should have gone to the very end of the piece of the block, or it should have started down below. So like if you look at this one on the wall, you'll see that like on that purple block, those points didn't touch the edge, but also the points coming down didn't touch each other. And we try not to have a lot of bulk built up where pieces come together on the quilts anymore, so it makes it easier for quilting. Sometimes it's not always, perfect, but we minimize that as much as possible. So if you minimize the number of seams that have to be met, then you don't have as much of a challenge. So like this little white, let's see, I can't really use a pointer to show you, but where there's a little white sashing strip that you guys did on the first few blocks, those have to match. And I think I even have seen a few comments come across on the support network of people who said that was a challenge, getting those little tiny sashing strips to come together perfectly at the tip. And they had to unpick it and resew it a few times. She makes it happen. And Mom says she has to do that too.
I have to be, it's intricate quilt or sewing. It's very precise work.
And some of our quilt patterns have a lot more of that kind of thing in it. Some of them have less. So that's going to dictate, you know, those are the sorts of things you want to look for if you're trying to decide, well, what would be a good block for me to, or a good quilt for me to start with. Someone actually asked that question, which pattern would be a good starter quilt? So we have tons. This one that we taught you is actually a fairly good starter quilt, especially in the wall size version. The only challenge at all is
the curve. That
curve right there, and then matching up those little pieces. That otherwise, this quilt is all straight lines. It's real easy. You know, this piece out here, these are all real easy, gentle curves. Plus, we have a full-length video to walk you through it. But we have others as well. Things like fractured paint box is a good one. The fractured star, prismatic star, summer solstice. A lot of beginners start with a pattern called desert sky, which does have a curve in it. But it's a fairly basic one.
Can I interrupt?
Yeah.
Hey, you guys, I have another tricky part that I want to show you here. So this is my sew side here. And when you look, I have to have my fabric coming all the way down to this point. And this is another really common mistake with beginners. And so when I flip this over, and I almost did it myself without even thinking about it. So this piece, and then it has to come all the way down into here. So I have to make sure when I put this on that I have fabric under that point. So I'm not going to line it up down here. If I do, there's no fabric under this point right here. So I would have to pull that off and replace it. Right? So I have to move this one up and make sure that this point down here has fabric underneath there. Right? So now I can actually open this up and sew on the line.
Oh, I'm on the wrong screen here.
So something else I want to mention to you guys is if you're sewing along and you find that your fabric's not feeding and it kind of seems to be puckering, pull your pressure foot off and check the bottom of it and make sure there's no repositionable glue built up on the bottom of that, right? And then just put your pressure foot back on after you clean it off. And Clorox wipes clean that off really, really nice. Okay, so I have that piece and it's fitting really nice. I'm actually going to take my glue pen and put a little bit of glue right on that point so that when I get ready to trim that, it's not going to move on me. Okay, now I have one more point that we have to add here. So we're going to fold this one over. And this is a really long point, and whenever I have really long points, even when I'm sewing, I like to glue those long edges together. Because a long point hanging like that is going to move underneath your machine really easy.
Earlier someone said you use a lot of bags, and I said paper clips also. Well, we also use a lot of glue. And sometimes a lot of starch.
Yeah. Okay, so now I'm going to switch my ruler out. When I trim, I actually like the Creative Grid rulers really well, because when you set them down on that paper, you can line them up at the bottom of your long line and the top of the line, and then just cut straight. Okay, sometimes you'll find that your paper looks like it shrunk a little bit. Just cut a straight line there, right?
Someone asked about tips on removing paper. I especially find it difficult with the glue. So we can talk about that, because you're going to remove that paper.
I'm going to pull this paper off for you.
So that ruler doesn't fit that curve perfectly, but she just rolls it so that it matches the line, and she slowly cuts around there.
So I have an S curve here. So basically this part of the curve up to the first transition line is an inside curve. Then I flipped the ruler over and I went from that point, and then I rolled it because that's an outside curve there, right? So we're going to sew those transition points because we need those when we're doing our S curves. And when I'm sewing TRP lines, I just do it just like my paper piecing. I'll run all of the papers through right before I trim it. And I actually forgot that I had these on here, so I trimmed it first. But I like to sew them before I trim, because then I only have basically 1 or 2 line threads that I have to cut instead of all the way along the edge. When you start doing your removing your paper, the only place you should have glue underneath here is under the very first section. And if you use the repositionable glue, it's going to come off for you, and you won't have anything left on the back side of your, you won't have any paper left on the back side. You just need to make sure not to use a lot of repositionable glue when you're doing that, and it doesn't take much, all right?
And if you're using the Yoo-Hoo glue stick,
you're going to end up with a little bit of paper that won't come off at the back.
But I've also found that in our instructions, there's a step that Mom puts in there, and I always forget to do it when I'm paper piecing, but she says right before you press it to loosen the glue on the first piece, because if you loosen it before you press, then you have less of a chance of that glue sticking on there.
It won't stick
because you pulled it apart. So yeah, that's one thing.
It's when you once you set that iron on there, that's when it's going to stick. If you can pull that loose in the paper piecing process, as soon as you get that first piece on there, and right after it's actually, you would pull it after the second piece, then you're pulling it when the glue is somewhat wet, and then when you set the iron on there, then it's not going to stick again. So it works really good if you do that.
So if you just remember to always loosen that before you do your first press. And then the other thing is, if you do end up with glue on there, you can use like water. A little bit of water will take that off. So I end up having to do that a lot because I always forget to loosen the glue.
So basically, start with the very last piece, and you'll find that most of the time then if you'll, when you're on a long seam, just take that and crease that like that. Fold the paper back and crease it along the seam, and it'll tear right off. So you got to get your hands underneath it. If you have a purple thing, you can use that purple thing and you can just run it right underneath there, then fold it back. And the end of your purple thing has, I don't think I have one out here, it has a little flat thing on it, and we use it for applique. You run that flat thing and it just basically, it creases that paper and then it tears right off. When I'm working with little tiny pieces, I just get in there and rip it out as fast as I can. It's hard to get a hold of the little tiny stuff, but when you're working with a long line, you can actually be a little bit clean and keep that folded back like that, crease that, and then those pieces tear right off like that.
Other good tips are to give them to your spouse while he's watching television.
Yep.
And another good tip is to pay your grandkids 25 cents each, or just make them brownies, because my kids used to fall for that one all the time. And remove the papers for mom. So
it was called slave labor.
Yeah. Well, it was funny the time Kadrian said, Grandma, 25 cents a paper's cool and everything, but I really just wish you would make brownies. And so she was like, that's a way better deal. So if you pay in brownies.
Okay. So get rid of this paper.
Okay, so it's right at 3 now. So if you guys can't stick around, it'll be, the rest of it will still be available for you to come back and watch later. But she's just going to show you this last curved seam, and that's it.
Okay, so this is the right piece here. Yep. So I have 2 TRP lines. They match up. So what I want to do is find the one that splits. So this one from here to here, that's just my outside curve. From here to here, that's my inside curve. So I want to pin this one first, and I'm only going to pin that particular one.
And there are a little bit more detailed instructions for this in your pattern too, starting on page 35. So
okay, so basically you have, if you're working with, depends on whether you're working with a left side piece or a right side unit. This one is actually my right side unit. So when I start sewing, I'm going to start sewing in the center, and so from the center out to the end. And then I'm going to come back to the center. I'm going to flip it over, and so from the center to the edge. All right. If I was working on my left side piece, it's going to turn out that I'm going to actually end up sewing from the edge to the center, from the edge into the center. So realize that's going to flip between a left side unit and a right side unit. And normally when we have an S curve, we're going to have the left side and right side pieces. So I've got my first pin in. I'm going to start sewing from the center out, so I'm going to go ahead and pin the second TRP line right here. And then I'm going to come down here and I'm going to match my smart corner, and I'm going to put glue at that smart corner. Get that set in place. Now we're going to glue just between just the curved seam, the outside curved seam, and we're going to leave this undone out here. So basically an S curve is a 2-part curve. You have the inside curve and then you have the outside curve. So right now we're sewing the outside curve first on the right side piece. I normally overlap the stitches just a little bit where I start. So we're going to place that at our first pin, and the overlap will be on the next time. So right here, we're going to start right on the TRP line, and we're going to start sewing. And I'm going to go down with my stitch length. And then when I get to the end where I have that my smart corners, I'm going to come right down on the point on this particular one. Because what I want is when I open this up, I want that to be straight. And if it's not straight, then it means you either took too wide of a seam or too narrow of a seam. And either way, you can come back and pick out about an inch and go back and get that to land right where it needs to be, so you have a nice straight edge along that. And those are the type of intersections and places where people have a problem fitting them together if they don't get that seam to lay straight along that edge. So it's important that you hit that right where the 1/4 inch is, and it's right on the point on that. All right, so now I'm going to take this and I'm going to flip it over. I'm going to grab my glue pen and I'm going to place my glue down here. And what this is a smart corner with a curve in it. So I have just a straight edge and then it's curved. And so I'm going to find the point. And there's kind of a little corner right there. And then I'm going to start right up my curve. So this, let's do this. Right from the point down, that's straight, and then going back this way, it starts around the curve. And Bradley's the only person that I've ever met that's been able to figure out how to do that smart corner around a curve. And it is so cool because everything comes out exactly the way it's supposed to come out. And then we're going to take that. And if you wonder who Bradley is, he's the one that actually does all the CAD work for these designs. Okay. So now I'm going to start and I'm going to overlap my stitches right there at that TRP line. And I have to come right down at that little point. So instead of just veering off and leaving a quarter, excess there, that's supposed to, my seam line comes right down to the point. And that's why I glue that point down. Right. So basically, I came right down to that point there. Now when I flip this back, I have a nice straight line there. Okay. Now I'm going to look at how I'm going to press this. Right. So this one, you're probably going to want to press it up like this. And we're going to press it into the black. And I'm going to press it and then I'm going to show you a trick. Okay, so what I'm going to show you guys is when you're actually pressing, sometimes when you start sewing this up, these seams, they don't lay down because there's hardly anything in that seam. So what I'll do is I'll open that up and I'll put a little bit of glue right along that edge there, and that holds that seam down for me. right like that. Then I'm going to pick this one up, and I'm going to come in and put a little bit of glue right underneath that. And now I have a nice straight seam, and I don't have to worry about those points moving as I'm sewing two long pieces together, because that seam is glued down right underneath there. The only time I ever regret doing that is if I have to pick that piece up because I accidentally cut it or did something to it I wasn't supposed to. But other than that, that works fantastic. And now we have this nice piece, and it's this nice straight seam here, it's a nice straight seam along here, and this piece fits right up underneath
on the other side,
this side, right like that. Okay, that's it. I'm glad you mentioned that, Judel.
Yay, we're done. So
I forgot.
Well, that concludes the Macaw videos. So if you guys run into any questions or anything, you can send us an email. If you post them on this, I do get notifications on Facebook of comments, so I'll try and pick them up if I see them. Otherwise, go ahead and send an email to Judel, which is Judel at Quiltworx.com, and we'll try and answer any of your questions for you. Otherwise, I think we're good to go. I'm going to switch over to a page real briefly that shows you all the ways that you can interact with us on social media. So if you're not part of the Quiltworx Support Network on Facebook or the Quiltworx Kits and Classes pages, we encourage you to do that. Also, follow our YouTube video. So if you go onto YouTube and follow Quiltworx.com, you can actually set that up so you get notifications whenever we put something new out there. And then we also have Instagram and some different things. So I'm going to switch over to that so that you can see all the different ways that you can interact with us. You can also sign up for our website on our news, or on our website. No, what did I say? You can sign up for our newsletter on our website. Sorry about that. And we also have Pinterest and, you know, some other fun things. And then we encourage you to follow Quiltster, check out the Quiltster Marketplace as well. And mostly we're just really excited about all of the people who joined us. I figure we had about 150 to 200 people join us live for the wall quilt, and then many, many more that watched it recorded. And for the Queen, we had about 50 people in each of our videos. So if you missed anything, you can go back and check that out on the recordings. And again, thank you so much for joining us.
Goodbye.
This was fun. Bye.